Hello and welcome back to the Poet Speaks podcast. Now, our next guest has been described as the best political poet in America, as well as the poet laureate of the struggle. He was the recipient of the 2017 Joe Hill Labor Poetry Award, the recipient of the 2022 Dante's Laurel Award. He has appeared on C-SPAN and has been featured in the Los Angeles Times, Axios, the Associated Press, Jornada, among other publications. He's the author of Mowing Leaves of Grass by FlowerSong Press and City on the Second Floor, both of which are taught at universities throughout the country. Please welcome to the podcast, Matt Sedillo. Matt, how are you?
Oh, I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Very excited.
Absolutely, Matt. And did I pronounce your last name right? Is it Sedillo?
Yeah, Sedillo, yeah.
Okay, all right. Just gotta make sure, you know what I mean? I don't want to be messing anything up. So tell us, tell us where are you at currently in the world? Introduce yourself a little bit. Where are you located currently right now?
Well, I'm Los Angeles based, and I'm in LA right now. So, joining here from LA, and so I recently just got back from Italy. Book got translated out there, but I'm gonna be here for about a month before I hit the road again. So, very
Okay,
excited.
very cool. Are you a native LAian, Los Angeloan? Are you a native Los
Los
Angeles?
Angelino, Los Angelinos, it's it. Yeah. I'm from LA,
Born and raised, huh?
born and raised. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, no, a lot of good stuff comes out of LA. What is your favorite part about being born, raised, bred in LA?
Well, Los Angeles, it's got a long standing Mexican community, Mexican American community, Chicano community, and being close to that history, just being around that is kind of yeah, it's very important to me, and a lot of history. I guess yeah, it's being near the history, being a part of the history. One of the major things in Chicano history was like the East LA walkouts. So, for instance, that's one. So, my mom was actually a student at Wilson High School, so which was the first high school to walk out, and so that's just one example. So that's just it's kind of living history. It's not even like it's like a casually living history. These
Yeah.
things are taught like around the country and really around the world in some cases. So to just be part of that, and just be around that, surrounded by that constantly, that's it's probably my favorite part of being here in LA.
That's what's up. No, it's definitely something it inspires you to a lot when you're around such history and such great things have happened. That's amazing. Now, tell us a little bit about your background and childhood. Now, you told a little bit about your mom, how she's part of that, part of the walkouts, going to one of those high schools. Tell us a little bit about your background. Like, obviously, you're, like you said, you're Chicano.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about just your background, your childhood. Were you introduced to poetry? Was poetry something that came later in your life?
Yeah. Well, when I was a kid, my mother introduced me to like she made me see like Shakespeare in the Park. Went to like the West Side, went to Shakespeare in the Park, and she'd like play tapes and stuff like this. And I was a kid. I remember probably like 3 or 4 years old. I mean, I vaguely. I mean, the stories are told me, so it's probably just the stories I was told. I probably don't remember this correctly. But my mother, she speaks this time that I was watching Hamlet, and there's a scene in Hamlet where Hamlet's mother, he's confronting with all her crimes, and she says, "Oh, Hamlet, sweet boy, speak to me no more." So they go home, and I'm playing with my toys. He says, before you play with those, you got to play with the other ones." And I say, "Mother, speak to me no more." So at 3 or 4, I was already quoting Shakespeare. I had my mother to thank for that. But I wanted to work in. My father, he taught me how to play chess and he never let me win. He would tell me when I was a kid that, one day you have to get a job. He always like beat me at chess and tell me I have to get a job. I was like 5 or 6. And so like that, I knew that when I grew up, I had to get a job and then no one was going to give me anything. I had to fight for everything. I kind of learned that from my dad. And so I want to be the president because when I was going to become the president, then no one could tell me what to do.
Mm.
And so I was going to become the president of the United States. That was my job. That was my idea. So at 5 or 6, I started memorizing all the names and terms of all the presidents, and I got pretty good at it. I actually got to the point where I was at high schools, like telling everyone the names and names and terms of the presidents. And I was like maybe 7, and I remember one time a teacher tried to trip me up with this trick question about Grover Cleveland, and I answered it. I said, "No, tell me the year you're born. I'll tell you who was president." So not only that's how I handled hecklers back then. And then Then, I was about 8 or 7 or 8. My father, he told me that, it's not likely that I ever be president because, we're Mexican. And, this is in the 80s. So this is before Obama's before that. So, he's maybe still right, but, so he wasn't like just trying to crush my dreams. He was just trying to be realistic with me. He saw like, that I was really serious about this. And I was really like, whatever. And so, that kind of crushed my dreams. He took me to DC and I went on that tour. So he was like, you could be a congressman, you could be a senator, right? But so he was really eager about that. So that kind of crushed my dreams. So then I dreamed of becoming a writer. And then I became a dream becoming a writer. And I wanted to be a novelist or like a screenwriter or something like this. I didn't have the idea of being a poet. And I wanted to make art for art's sake. And I was abandoning the idea of politics. And I was going to, really reach into the human experience. And I don't know how I got these ideas at like 9 or 10. But that's my idea, to make art for art's sake, be like avant-garde or something like that. But then, like life happens and, at 17, 18, 19, I got to get a job. So I'm working and more things go wrong. And, I end up living in Dallas and I end up like losing my job and I'm living my car. And I'm not working another job. And all my life I heard how smart I was, but yeah, here I was living in my car. So how does this make sense? So then I went to the library and started reading about political economy. So then I was very serious. I was become a proletarian organizer and abandoned my dreams of being a bourgeois artist. And so I learned, that if in order to do that, you have to like work really hard and convince people that you're the best worker for them to follow you as an organizer, which is not true at all. I worked really hard. Everyone hated me because the management wanted them to work harder, right? So I was like a scout. I was hated. So I was like, oh my God, this isn't working out. I moved back to California. And so there, my dreams of being an artist, of being a bourgeois artist were gone. And my dreams of being a serious proletarian organizer were dashed. And I started going to these open mics. A friend of mine was an organizer. He took me to them. And I saw his political poetry. I'm like, I can do that. And I could probably do it better than most people because I know a lot of information. And so, unable to become a bourgeois artist, unable to become a proletarian organizer, I became the best political poet in America.
Well, hey,
That's
that's what's up. That's how you that's how you round about that 180, right? I mean, shoot, that's just as good as becoming president of the United States. You're the best
Hey, why not?
in America. Hey, why not? Exactly. Well, that's quite an amazing story. I mean, tell us a little bit about that though. As I'm so curious, kind of poking more into that. You go from living in your car, I mean, to that. I mean, that's such an experience of just a lot, life really hitting you when it rains really hard, to kind of where you're at now traveling the world with poetry. How is that trajectory when you look back? Because I know sometimes, even in my own life, I look back on where I've been to where I am now. You can't even kind of wrap your mind around it. For you, I mean, have you been able to wrap your mind around all of the accomplishments where you've came from to where you are now?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Essentially, I was somebody who before I was like before I like really got into like politics, I was somebody who always felt like I had these skills and always felt like I had something to say. I always felt like I was a great artist in me that was just waiting to be born. And that's why I wanted to be a novelist. That's when I wanted to like be a writer, director, and all these things that were just really difficult to, get to. So they remain dreams because I didn't have any connections. I didn't know where, so they just remain dreams. And in many ways, I probably didn't even pursue them really. I pursued them half-heartedly. I didn't really pursue them because I was probably scared of what they would entail because of the largeness of the stage. And
Yeah.
nothing in my life told me that like, yes, you truly are. You know, you could be one of the blah blah blah. And so you could be like a great, film director. You could be a great novelist. You could be somebody that was, on the television circuit and being interviewed by David Letterman or Oprah Winfrey or something. Nothing in my life told me that. So it was just this dream, and it was a arrogance, and it was an insecurity, and it was just a howling at the moon and just being angry all the time. At that time I was a severe alcoholic. I've since then 10 years sober, but so that was who I was then. Then I abandoned all those ideas for like I was gonna be like this really hardcore, like I'm gonna be like a Marxist organizer and I'm gonna fight for the proletariat and this that. And so like that became that. I became very humorless and whatever. I kind of like had a personality change. And then I kind of got involved in doing poetry because you could write a poem and you could be on stage the next day. It wasn't like these other big dreams. It was very immediate. So I got into the open mic scene because the poetry scene is the way it is. It's very embracing of people. on the surface level, or at least in the entry level. They're very
Yeah.
embracing people. You get a little higher, then it gets a little, it becomes like the rest of the world. But you know, that was kind of my initiation in. And so all of a sudden now I was an artist. Now I was in front of people. Now I was in front of crowds. And they liked what I had to do, and they liked what I had to say. And I was, you know, a very good artist. And so I learned how to kind of craft this art. And then, you know, now I like process the world through like poetry. I look at things and start thinking about how would I turn that into a poem, and not just any poem. How would I turn that into a poem in the specific style that I've developed over the last 15 years? How do I like kind of convert this information set into, you know, poetry? How do I convert this set of information into like a typical Matt Sedillo poem? Is now how I kind of go through the world. That's how my mind has changed. My life, the accomplishments, the things that I've been able to do. I'm not one to rest on laurels. I'm not one to rest on accomplishments. So it always seems new. I'm always having like this, like the talking heads, like David Byrne. How did I get here? I'm always having that moment all the time. I mean, when there's very like practical answers, like, okay, well, you did this, and you did this, and you did this, and that's how that happened. But every time I'm in Venice at like an international poetry festival with poets from like Belgium and Russia and where, and I have this, how did I get here? Right. And then I'm at Casa las Americas, and I'm there with poets and intellectuals from Colombia, from Puerto Rico, from, you know, you know, all over Latin America, from Mexico City, you know, and here I am reading poetry in this panel, you know, at Casa las Americas, Havana, Cuba, the most prestigious cultural institution in Cuba. How did I get here? You know, I'm getting an award in Italy, in Ravenna. They're putting a literal laurel on my head by Italian monks. Are putting up a laurel on my head. I'm 20 feet from the tomb of Dante. How did I get here? And it's just none of it like, so there's never this process like, oh man, you know. So I'm not the type to be like arrogant. I'm not the type to be like all like or that, or get all haughty about it, or get all like you know, whatever about it. So every experience, every time it's something big happens for me, I'm just like shocked. I'm as shocked as anyone, you know. So it's good. I guess it's good for me because I don't ever get cynical about it. I always get like, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, those sound like just completely once in a lifetime. I mean, you can even write, I mean, they're putting literally a laurel on your head for poetry. I mean, that's literally like you couldn't even write a better story. And I do want to ask you about, you know, you have, like you said, you know, Chicano identity, and your work explores that. How for you has your cultural identity affected your writing?
It affects my writing. Well, you know, when I first started, it was much more. I was much more. How do I put this? All right, so like it wasn't that like what I wrote wasn't about being Chicano, or what, or was absent from the work. But if there was like a split, it'd probably be like 60-40. Like 60% of it's like I'm a citizen of the world. I am, you know, a working class person, and I will fight for all of us, right? And then about 40% of it's all like, you know, I'm Chicano, like that was racist. I'm gonna smack the, you know, I'll meet you in the parking lot, you know, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And, but then, you know, when Trump became president, and I saw how explicit the attack on was against Mexico. You know, Mexico would pay. We're going to build a wall. We're going to do this. And you know, Mexico saying drug dealers and rapists, they're not good people. And just how often he would go back and back and back towards that. And I would see how all these like working class organizations, how these socialist organizations, Marxist would deal with this question, and how they kept running back to, well, the people that are going to Trump rallies, they're worried about trade, they're worried about this, they're losing their jobs, they're losing their homes, they're feeling the economic pinch, and that explains that. So we need to be like have kindness with them and patience, and we need to make sure that we understand that there are class brothers and sisters and all this stuff like this. And I'm like, these people are talking about building a wall. These people are talking about deporting everyone. These people are talking about Operation Wetback, which was something that happened in this country. They're talking about like deporting people. They're talking about like not just, you know, like deporting everybody. It's because he's saying that he's not going to split up families, meaning, you know, U.S. citizens will be deported. That's happened in this country. That actually happened to my grandfather. So like you're talking about things that affect me directly, and you're telling me to have sympathy for the people who are like calling for bloodshed and murder. You know, this is a time when Ann Coulter was talking for like drones at the border and just dropping bombs on the Mexican border. And you're telling me to have sympathy for people who are energized by that, for people who are, you know, so that was a huge split for me. So then I became much more writing about these things that I already knew about, that I already, that whatever. I started drawing more from my own life experience. I stopped being less so general and more specific about like, this matters, this is important. And that's kind of like the direction that led in. And then once that, then things kind of snowball. So I started writing more about that. I mean, it's not that I hadn't written about that. I started writing more about that. And so I wrote more about that. I started getting more invitations to more events, more like Chicano moratoriums, more this, more that, all these different cultural events around these questions, around the Chicano struggle. And the more I'm around people, the more I'm thinking about it, and the more my mind is processing things, the more I'm reading new books, the more I'm taking in new information and combining that with the lived experience I already had.
Mm.
Um, and then that begins to really shape my work. Since probably about so it's really a sea change around 2014. I started doing this in 2008. I had the sea change in 2014, and it's carried over since. So this is still
Absolutely.
what's happening.
No, absolutely. No, that sounds like such, I mean, it's such prevalent, but also like it's a history that it's been here for so long. I mean, so you just writing about it in present day is again, it's just part of it's that political work that we are all trying to dismantle and undo. No, greatly appreciate. Wow. Now you know what I do want to talk about, like we have said before. I mean, you write about such strong prowess in terms of uh, identity, culture, societal issues. And you've achieved so much recognition in communities all across the world. Really, at this point, like we said, you've been described as the best political poet in America, one of the most important working class intellectuals of our time, as well as the poet laureate of the struggle by academics, poets, journalists alike. I mean, for you at this stage in your career, I mean, what do we kind of touched on it, but what do those types of titles even mean to you at this point of your career and your writing livelihood?
Well, I mean, it's an incredible it's an incredible honor. I mean, I'm very happy. But I don't really. I mean, it goes great in the bio. I mean, the person that said best political poet in America, that was Greg Palast, who's this investigative journalist who's known throughout the world. The one that said that was polar struggles, Paul Ortiz, who's the author of An African American and Latinx History of the United States, was a bestseller. He also wrote Emancipation Betrayed, which is another amazing book. And he was the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program Director, and he's also former oral historians of America, the president of the Association. And
Mm,
so, this guy was, these are incredible people. So to have earned their respect, I mean, whoa. I mean, Greg, I mean, he interviewed Hugo Chavez and he held the sword of Simone Bolivar. I mean, that's amazing. So to have that kind of respect from someone like that is incredible. So I think that the fact that's been said and that's true, and you Google it, it's there, that helps my career. But what does it mean to me? It means a lot to me that this guy Greg Palast, who I admire, would say that. It means a lot to me that Paul would say that. It means a lot to me that Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz said I was one of the best poets of a generation. That means a lot to me. Those things mean a lot to me. That people I respect me. That's like wow. Um, but as the accolades, as like a shiny apple, as like a plaque on the wall, what do these things mean? Um, just that I need more. I need to keep going. I need to keep going.
sure.
Um, and if they they add up, they add up. I mean, it's my goal to become like a historical figure. Like as somebody who, you know, I've had reviews, and in these reviews they've compared me to Amiri Baraka, they've compared me to Ginsberg, they've compared me to Roque Dalton, they've compared me to Bertolt Brecht. And it's a huge honor, but it's my goal not to say like I've been compared to these people, but for that just to be very natural. Like my name becomes like their name, not
Mm,
just. And so that's my goal. And so
yeah.
I know that sounds like wild to people. That sounds like arrogant, or it sounds whatever. But it really just I just practically taking the steps to make that happen.
No, absolutely. And I'm curious for you, we talk about and I think this comes up in a lot of people's where their art practice, whether especially in writing, let's say in poetry especially, there is this kind of, you want to reach a certain type of level. Now we know most people, you probably won't reach that quote unquote level of top person there, or be able to reach those accolades of great great poet, all those things and those types of honors. But I'm so curious for you. I mean, what do you say to those younger poets out there that really do, what do you do? Do you focus on the end goal, which is the award, which is the honoree, which, like you said, it looks good on a resume. It looks good if you can Google someone and there are those titles already given. What do you say to that kind of young poet that's out there that's like, I'm struggling, how do I even get my work out there? How do I'm writing about these things, I'm writing about culture, I'm writing about society, but I'm not seeing that same, I'm not seeing that same end result of just winning. I'm not seeing those accolades being given. I mean, what do you say to those younger poets out there?
I would say that what would have to actually be said varies case to case.
Mm,
I mean, there are I would, but the general thing I would say is there are answers to your questions. How do I do this? How do I do that? Whatever questions you may have, there are answers. There are practical steps you can take. The biggest thing that you got to get over is this hurdle where you don't actually believe you deserve to achieve your goals.
mm,
Most people don't believe they deserve to achieve their goals, not really. And so what they end up doing is not throwing a manuscript in the fire or throwing a laptop down a flight of stairs. That's not what happens. What they do is they procrastinate. They find ways to not do the things they know they need to do in order to achieve their goals because they don't believe they deserve to achieve them. Maybe they believe they have the skill, the talent, and the ability, the raw ability to do it. What they don't believe is that should they achieve these goals, someone will say something about them. Someone will say something really positive about them that they, as a person, don't believe they deserve to have said about them.
mm,
So the number one thing to do that is not to improve your self-image. I can't help you improve your self-image. You need to go to therapy or you need something else for that. What you need to do is disentangle your self-image from your work.
mm.
So your work is your work and you are you. And so your work over here, if you meet certain criterias, it will be acclaimed. If you do certain things, it will be acclaimed. If it's detailed, if it's layered, if it does this, if it moves certain kinds of ways and it does it in a very unique fashion, in a way that we haven't seen before, you're gonna get acclaimed. That work will be acclaimed, and that work will be attached to your name because how else will we talk? But you're not your work. If you're arrogant, you think you can get 10 ounces of water into an 8-ounce glass. You can't. 10 ounces is 10 ounces. If you're insecure, you think you can't get 6 ounces of water into an 8-ounce glass. You can. It's 6 ounces, that's an 8-ounce glass. The glass is the glass, the water is the water. Your work is the same way. Your work and its appraisals, it's the same thing. But because you're associating yourself, you got to get out of the mirror. You got to just do it, and like, and if you have problems with self-esteem, you have issues, and we all do. I mean, oftentimes when I achieve things, I end up, after it's over, I'm by myself in the hotel and I'm staring out the window. I'm all depressed. I wrote a poem one time about this. It says that, like, it started listing all the places that the newspapers have been, right? And then I said, blah, 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 blah. At the end, I said, and that means everything all at once and nothing once it's done.
Mm.
Right. So there, yeah, that may happen. You may have a profound loneliness afterwards. No different than like people describe graduating from a university, getting their master's, getting their doctorate, and all of a sudden they sit there with their degree and they haven't inherited any superpowers. They haven't
Yeah.
fundamentally changed who they are. They're still the same person.
Mm.
Or people describe like after the honeymoon, you're married, but you're a married person now, but you're still the same person, right? Well, these things are no different. You're gonna go out and you get that award. You're gonna be recognized. You're gonna win a Pulitzer. These are things I've done. You're gonna win a Pulitzer. You're gonna do this. You're gonna do that. You're gonna wake up the next day and still be the same person.
Yeah.
So you need to, in order to, a therapist or somebody who's a life coach, some of that will tell you that you need to like yourself, you need to love yourself, um, regardless of these things. And that's for them to tell you. I'm going to tell you the other thing. The other side of that is this: you need to work hard on your work, regardless if you're going to be celebrating and happy about it or you're going to cry about it.
Yeah.
In order for you to get the you winning the award and you getting these things and you having a successful writing career and you writing well, you writing really interesting things that we talked about, because you can win awards and write like crap. But here's what's going to happen: your work's not going to stand the test of time. Because after you're gone, people can see this as it's crap, and they're not going to want it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So then but if you write well and win those awards, if you do both, then you're gonna live on forever. So if you want to do those things, doing those things doesn't have much to do with your self-image.
Mm.
I mean, actually doing it, the actual steps doesn't have much to do with self-image, but your self-image can prevent you from doing those things.
Yeah, you know what, man, dropping some straight gems right there. I really like that. Those are some really diamonds in the rough. You had said, you really can't. Insecurity is looking at an 8-ounce glass and having 6 ounces and thinking I can't pour it in there. Haughtiness and like arrogance is looking at an 8-ounce glass and having 10 ounces and thinking, yo, I can fit it up in there just fine. It reminds me of a quote I recently heard. I remember someone had said, and it wraps into what you're saying, and it really reminds me of it. It's this idea of people, get rid of this idea of fearing failure, because what do you fail, guess what, you're gonna have to continue working hard the next day. If you win, you're still gonna have to continue on that same road to continue working hard to keep it going. So either which way, the result always ends in the same. Tomorrow is a new day that you have to keep working. Whether you win or fail, you're just gonna have to keep doing the same thing and working hard. So it's one of those things. It does put into perspective, so much of we tie one thing, our idea of self into the work that we're putting out into this world. But then in the same breath, it's you sometimes get them conflated. Well, I'm fearful of what people will think, but it's either which way, the work, you have to just make the work. It's such a great point with the procrastination. A lot of us fear that. I know I've definitely been in that boat before too, and it's really just go for it, jump into it. That's the best way to start. No, that was amazing. How did you kind of come to that conclusion? How do you come to those conclusions for yourself? What has kind of brought you to that point in life where you've kind of accepted that type of thinking?
Failure. I mean, failure, and a lot of the failure, some of the failure was because I was trying to get, things that like my work couldn't get, and it wasn't that my work won't be acclaimed, it was just things that my work couldn't get because they were looking for something that was more, that like words that like dance across the page, and you can do this with them, you can do that with them, and like these are avant-garde. Yeah, and I don't really do that, or they were looking for something more like heartfelt and emotional, and I don't really do that either. I mean, I have like a 3-act structure. I have ability to world build, and I set up a conflict, and I resolve the conflict with elements of the world build. And well, I'm very, very good at what I do. I'm very, very good at what I do. But like, there are things that people might be looking for that I'm not. So that's another thing. I mean, like, a big piece of advice of like, you don't have any of these mental hangups. You're like, okay, I got that. That's fine. The next piece of practical advice is go where the love is. I mean, go where people will appreciate your work. Build up there. Build up there. I'm not telling you to abandon these things because there's some things you may want that you don't have, right? That would mean a lot to you if you could get these things, but you can't at this moment. And maybe the reason you can't is there's a gatekeeper there, and they don't like you for whatever reason, or they don't like your work for whatever reason. Okay, well, you can't get in there right now.
Yeah.
Go over somewhere else. Build a huge reservoir of accomplishment and whatever, and then when the time is right, open up the floodgates and and bulldoze your way right in. I mean, because at a certain point, people can't deny you, or they look ridiculous. You know what I mean? At a certain point, it's like someone doesn't want to give you your props, right? But then you go over and if the general consensus about you is still, the jury's still out on you, right?
Yeah.
And somebody in a certain position won't give you your props. At that point in time, it looks like, well, maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. Who knows? The only time will tell. You come back and you have all these accomplishments, this huge stack resume of these things you did elsewhere. You come back and you still want this thing, and they're like, no, no, no. Well, now they look ridiculous.
Yeah.
You don't look ridiculous. They look ridiculous because clearly, whatever. And so at that point, I mean, I'm not gonna tell you that. I mean, there are a lot of haters, and there's a lot of gatekeepers, and there's a lot of people doing a lot of weird stuff. High school never ends. I mean, once you kind of accept that high school never ends, you can kind of move forward a little bit and just do things in a practical, precise manner. Like, try not to waste time. Try not to waste time you doing things in ways that don't work, and try and like outsmart your problems. Like, accept that you're gonna have problems, and then try and figure out, how do I outsmart these problems? And don't take it personal. Like, really, really look at it like you're playing a game of chess. Like, like let's say your goal is to get listed in this journal. Your goal is to get a piece over here. Your goal is to speak at this university. And there's somebody, for whatever reason, that doesn't want you to. It's their job, it's their objective to make sure that you don't.
Yeah.
It's your objective to make sure that you do. But treat it like a game of chess. Like, don't treat it like, this person's out to get you or ruin you or whatever, which maybe they are. But by you engaging in that, you're not doing yourself any favors. Treat it like a game of chess. Treat it like a game. Like, okay, I have to outsmart this. I have to outsmart this issue. I have to outsmart this person. I have to outsmart this problem. And go about doing that. And so, like, when you ask me this question, like, what advice I have for young writers, I mean, people give you kind of pithy answers. Most people give pithy answers when asked that. I really want to give practical advice. I really do. But that question, it varies. The practical advice for this one might be different from that. And also, things change. I mean, like, when you start getting things, it's easier to get more. So my practical advice, I mean, it's not hard for me to book a college. I've spoken at like 146 different colleges in the U.S. It's not hard for me to book college. If I want a college and I'm not, if I want a college pay me like, $5,000, that's difficult. If I want a college pay me $1,500, I'm like, yeah, I need to book some colleges. Start reaching out. It's very easy for me because, if I want to book college I've never done, pretty easy for me because proof of concept. People trust me to do colleges because I've done so many. If that's what your goal is, let's say you have, well, that's a common goal, right? If your goal is to speak at a university, here's what I would suggest. Find friends that are professors, whatever, have them invite you to your classroom. And then put, point by point, and then create like a graphic out of that. So you get like 5 schools, right? And then you point. I've spoken at UCLA, I've spoken at Occidental, I've spoken at this was Cal State Northridge, and many more, or something like this. And then after that, you can now market it to other schools to get paid. So whatever it is you're trying to do, don't try and jump in and don't try and jump at the front line. You're gonna get squashed. You're gonna get squashed every time. Whatever the thing is, try to jump to the front of the line, you're gonna get squashed. Develop a plan to get yourself to the front of the line as quickly as possible, but don't think you can just jump to the front because you're gonna get smashed. Maybe you can, but I don't want to discourage. I mean, if someone can do it, then they can do it. But like, it's very difficult. So if you just practically make small steps towards the ultimate goal, in a rapid succession, you can get there pretty quickly. And then once you've like done that, then let's say you've done like 4 or 5 colleges, and like you're not trying to make much money, but like after that, you can start asking the schools for like $1,000, and then you get that a few times, then you can do 1,500, then you get to 25, and that's pretty much the cap. I mean, for poets, getting more than that usually requires like a bunch of other things, but then you can be making $2,500 per college, a relatively quick time. But you got to look at it like practically, here to there to there. Most universities are not looking for performances or just performances. They're also looking for workshops, something tangible the students can take away. That's some practical advice right there. So.
Absolutely. No, just again dropping gems. No, we really, really love that, and hearing that that practical advice really helps a lot of people, because I think a lot of people, again, they don't know where to even begin. And speaking of colleges, I'm so intrigued. So you have coursework, your poem structure, as well as your work, specifically Mowing Leaves of Grass, which came out in 2019. It's currently being taught at California State University at Northridge, Monterey Bay, as well as Mission College. And your 3-act poem structure has been taught as capstones of coursework at UCLA and Occidental College. I mean, how the hell? How does that even become a thing? How did you even get that started? How did your work now is something that students are now taught? It's legacy work at this point. How did you even get that call? Did you make that call? How did this go about?
So Mowing Leaves of Grass is now taught at Northridge. It's taught at Mission College, but it's also taught at Berkeley. It's taught at Madison. It's taught at UTEP. It's taught about it's over like a dozen schools at this point in time. That's expanded way more since I need to update my website since I wrote all that. So like that was, Mowing Leaves of Grass took on a life of its own. Sea and Second Floor is taught at a few universities as well. So you write a book, they take on a life of their own. I mean, like some of these things I kind of maneuvered, I kind of worked on, but some of the other things I'm just like, I find out, someone calls me up, whatever. I found out my Mowing Leaves of Grass, I found out was sold at the Cheech which is a Cheech Marin's museum out here. And like someone
Wow.
just took a picture and they're like, "Hey, your book's sold at the museum, right?" I'm like, "What the?" And I rushed down there. It's sold at the Latin American Museum. And so books really take on a life of their own. I went and spoke at UNAM, which was a big dream of mine to go speak at the University of UNAM, which is the most prestigious university in Mexico. Some would argue it's the most prestigious university in Latin America. And so I was really excited to be down there and where. So I'm like, I got down there. It's my dream. I'm here. I did it. I need a new dream. It is now my dream for my book to be taught here, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we're doing these events in the community as well as the university. And this guy comes up to me, he's like, "I really want to meet you. It's a big honor to meet you." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. How'd you hear my work?" He's like, "I teach your book at UNAM."
Wow.
So it was already happening,
Mm.
without me trying to maneuver or figure something out or pull something. It was already being taught. So it was like, wow. So books really take on a life of its own. I mean, I some of these things I don't even know. I mean, I don't know. So that's why you should write a book. Everyone should write a book. Everyone should try and write a book because it's like you have your life and your thing, and your book has its, and it's just it's incredible. It's like it's like having a child just watching it go in the world, and you're like, wow.
Yeah. Now tell us a little bit, I mean, I'm still curious about, and share as much as you feel comfortable. What is the back end of that? Like, when your book is taught as coursework, or like you said, you were surprised it was at the Cheech that at that museum. Is there a financial gain? Is there a financial benefit to that you gain? Or like, is there something, what exactly happens with that?
Well, obviously, I gain when my books sell. But I'm not told where they sell to. So so I have no idea who's buying these books. So just I mean, I watch things and I watch my Amazon thing rate go up, and I watch when I have this book that's I have a site that has it where you can just get the PDF, and
Mm,
so every time I see those go up, I'm like, okay, it's being taught. So it's being taught at a university, right? All of a sudden, I shoot to like number 14 or number 12 or number 8, on the Amazon, poetry, whatever. I'm like, okay, some classroom just like bought like a bunch of students just bought like 30 copies in like a couple different places. So, yeah, that's the financial benefit. So it's not really anything explicit, but the fact of the matter is that the fact that it's being taught means that you have a group of people who are like 19 years old,
yeah.
for the most part, 18, 19 years old, and taking it, it's taught mostly in Chicano Studies classes. So usually trying to connect to their roots, trying to connect to something familiar. And one of the formative experiences is reading my book. And so, wow.
Yeah,
What can I say?
absolutely.
What can I say? I mean,
Absolutely.
it's an honor, it's responsibility, it's you know,
Yeah. So everyone go check out, yeah, Mowing Leaves of Grass. That's phenomenal. Big congratulations on that, Matt. Tell us a little bit about, I'm curious about your 3-act poem structure and how that's now being taught as capstones of coursework. Tell us a little bit of the background of your 3-act poem structure. How long has that been your modality of writing? And how did that come into, was this just people through the schools just found this out and said, we need to teach this as capstone? How that come
no,
up?
no, I pushed that one. I mean, like that one I pushed. The 3-act poem came from writing, just writing a lot, and then trying to reverse engineer my best work, because I always tell people that don't study other artists, study techniques, like
Mm-hmm.
study techniques that other artists employ, study like little maneuvers that they do, but don't become a carbon copy of anybody. You really like this part where I love the part where they did this and this. Well, study that, and then study something else from someone else and study something else. But even more than studying other people, become a student of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
become a student of your own mind, right? And so that's what I did. I became a student of my own best work. I started reverse engineering it. I started figuring out like, how did I do this, and how did this part have this, and how did it dip, and how did it rise, and I realized that, okay, this I write in a 3-act structure. I mean, it's pretty clear this is what I'm doing. And in the beginning, there's a world build. In the middle, I have a conflict, and in the end, I resolve the world. I resolve my conflict with elements from the world build. Right. So we're great. Oh my God, they're destroying us. Oh, we won because we're so great, right? And that's kind of like how I write. And so knowing that, I am like, well, okay, well, how do I teach this? And so then I just started just doodling. And so I ended up drawing up this 3-act structure, which on top has a circle. And then over here, it has a circle and says topic. This circle says details. This circle says points. On this side, act 1, act 2, act 3. So what is my topic? What am I writing about? I have only one opportunity to write about this. What are my details? What do I have to have in there? Down here, what is my basic point? What am I trying to say about this topic? Okay, now that I know that, how do I best organize my details to make my point? So what do I say first? What do I say in the middle? What do I say in the middle? Okay? Because what I feel is that when you enter in a flow state, you can answer these questions simultaneously. You can answer your style and your substance, your form and your content, essentially your how and your what. What am I writing about? How am I going to do it? But we're not always in flow state. So we're not always not inspired. We're not always, whatever. So if we can answer these questions one at a time, what am I writing about? Topic, details, point. How am I going to write it? We can reverse engineer our best work. We can create our best work that way. Because I really believe that people need to do that. Maybe develop a style, turn that style into discipline, and then turn that discipline into a standard of excellence that they hold themselves to every time out. Because once you do that, you become the world's leading expert as to why you're excellent. And once you're the world's leading expert as to why you're excellent, to why you're great, no one can discredit you and you'll never seek validation. Because even if you think someone else is great, they're not the world's leading expert as to why you're excellent. You are. So,
ooh, boy,
that's why I don't care. I simply do not care what people tell me. They think, oh, you need to do this. You don't know what makes me great. I do. I know, and maybe you do a little bit, but I know better than anybody. That's what makes me great. So all my decisions are deliberate. So I know better than anybody what makes me great. So why do I care?
Yeah.
Even if you're great, even if you're just phenomenal at what you do, why do I care what you think about what I do?
Yeah. No, I love what about that was the really a good line there that I really took away was become actually a student of your own mind. Be the captain of your own ship, like lead your own life. I mean, and that's such a Matt, that's such a simple thing, but it's so hard. I think it's so hard for so many people to do that. It's so simple, but so simplicity is so complicated. No, but I think you make such great points there and how we really do need to be in service to our own excellence to really dig deep and really be in service of that because we're worthy of that, like you said earlier.
Absolutely,
we are worthy of that.
So I'll give you like a concrete example. I teach in the prisons, right?
Yeah.
And there was a student there. This guy Albert Lua, right? And I told him, like, you don't really we have kind of similar approaches, but you do something a little different, right? You write that you're like innocent, and then things go wrong, and you're trying to return to that innocence. You're trying to return to that decency, right? That's kind of like you tend to write in this direction, but that's kind of how I'm noticing your patterns, right? And I write much more like, like we're heroic, we're awesome. Oh my God, we're getting destroyed. No, we're gonna win, right? That's how I write. I grew up like watching professional wrestling. I remember Hulk Hogan. He would come out, he get beat up, and he start shaking his head. Like that's that's how typical what boy stories, right? So I write the hero's journey, right? That's what I do. But that's not quite what you're doing, Albert. You're doing something a little different. So let's work on this. And so we came up with this idea of a central metaphor to write about the beach. So the first poem he writes about the beach, and I gave him guidance. I totally gave him guidance. I'm not gonna tell you a story that's not true. This is how it happened. I gave him guidance. I said, first you're gonna write that you're walking towards the water, and you dip your toes in. And at this point in time, nothing's gone wrong. You're just seeing a world of possibilities. Then now you're knee deep. Now you're in the life. Now you're waist deep. Now you're running things. Now you're neck deep. Now you're drowning. You got to get back to shore. So that's what you're gonna do. And he wrote this beautiful poem. Starts to talk about being, he's waist deep. Like call me beside in these waters, I guide them. He did kind of hip hop style. With these waters, I guide them, and the captains of mighty fleets, they bow to me. And then all of a sudden, he's like, now I'm neck deep. Now I'm drowning. And I gotta swim back. And I'm swimming for my family. I'm swimming for my children. I'm swimming for this. And then he says, at the end, he says, and I tell them the story of their father who put down his trident to lift them on his shoulder. And their life now begins on the ocean in a world of possibilities, right?
Wow.
Beautiful. Comes back the next week, and he wrote this poem where he is a child and he's in a parking lot. And the next thing you know, he's inside the carnival, and he's with his parents on a merry-go-round. and they're holding him, they're guiding him. He gets off the merry-go-round, and he's no longer like 7 years old when he entered. He's now 12. And he gets on a tilt-a-whirl, and it's spinning, and he's watching as people start get thrown up and wanting to get off and whatever, and they can't handle it, but he can. He's tough. And he gets off, and he's 17. And now he's the king of the carnival. And he sees the whole world from the top of a Ferris wheel. He sees the winos, he sees the dealers, he sees this, he sees that. And his throne is in the fun house. And he sees all these mirrors as reflections. And he sees himself as a young child. He sees himself as he currently is. He sees himself in the future. He sees himself holding a gun. He sees himself shooting the gun. He sees himself being led to prison. He sees himself in chains on a bus. And all the mirrors shatter. And he grabs a hold of a shard of glass. And as he looks into it, it's himself. Its reflection is alive. And he starts telling the child to be gentle and to be kind. And I didn't write that. He wrote that. And Albert wrote that by studying the things that he did. You know, I showed him, I guided him, I helped him on that initial path, but he came back with something totally unique, nothing to do with me, because he followed the advice of becoming a student of his own mind, a student of his own best work. And so I told him, Albert, you do this again and again and again, you do this often enough, and you replicate this work, just like this, you know, and you stay true to this, to developing this style, turning to discipline, this discipline to a standard of excellence, you'll become the godfather of prison poetry. People will look at this type of writing, they will call it Lua-esque. This greatness will be associated with your name. You know?
Yeah. Wow. Oh, that's very deep. Wow, that's amazing. That's and I'm sure, more than sure, I mean, these types of interactions, I'm sure for you, that's life-changing. I'm getting chills. I get chills just listening to you retell that.
Well, I would encourage all listeners as well. I mean, develop a style to self-discipline, discipline to standard of excellence, and get sharper and sharper and sharper at these weird little nuances and intricacies that you do, that process the world in a way that you do and no one else does. And I'm not, this isn't even like inspirational. I'm not telling you you're enough. No, I'm not, you're not enough. You need to get better at it, get better and better and better and better and better at it. So you develop these qualities so sharp and so clean and so pristine, so dynamic that when you execute them, people will associate those techniques and those maneuvers with your name.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's how you become a legend.
Hoo-wee. Matt, dropping some gems. Absolutely. No, I really appreciate that. Tell us a little bit about, I mean, I'm so curious. Now, your workshops, so you do your workshops, schools as well as prisons. Tell us a little bit about your workshops and your work. You've toured all over the world with it.
The workshops, yeah. Well, it's a 3-act poem. I show people how to do it, and you know, it depends on what the topic is. You know, people bring me in for different topics, but it's quickly adaptable to essentially any topic, whatever we want to talk about. Because all I'm showing you, I'm not telling you what to think. You know, you can think what you want. I'm just showing you how to dynamically execute those thoughts, those whatever. I mean, I used to be, you know, much more like politically involved. I used to organize and all kinds of stuff like that. I focus more on art these days, and I'm really here to help people who do organize, because I'm not a great organizer. And see, I know that because I have a bad temper. I get like, man, like, you have one job, was to bring the chairs, and you know, and it's just like, you know, like, you're driving people out of the movement. I'm like, they need to go, you know, like, they couldn't bring the chair. So I am definitely not the one to organize around. You know, but I'm good at this, and I can show people how to do this, and so that's what I do. It's my calling, and it's my best talent I have to offer the movement. So this is what I do. And maybe I'm rationalizing, I don't know, but so yeah, but this is what I teach. I teach this. So whatever the topic is we want to talk about, I'll do it. If we want to like talk about healing from addiction, we'll do it. But we're gonna use these methods. We want to talk about, like, you know, writing a poem, a protest poem about whatever the cause is, we'll do it. We're talking about the environment, we'll do it. We're talking about, you know, systemic racism, we'll do it. We're talking about, like, you know, like, you know, the billionaires must go, we'll do it. Whatever it is you want to do, we're gonna do it. But we're gonna do it this way. This is the most dynamic way I know how to write, and we'll tap into your greatest dynamism as well, because there are some things that are static, the beginning, the middle, the end. It's a pretty dynamic way to communicate. And so that's what's like static. That's what's static. The variable is your mind waves, the way that you think, the way that you operate. So when those things come together, you know.
Amazing. And I'm so curious too. I mean, this idea, being all over the world and like talking about poetry, like you said, you're coming back from Italy. What is the one thing you think you've seen? I mean, what is something, how is poetry in Italy, United States, Mexico? I mean, like, what is the kind of one, is there anything that's so synonymous in all these places? What does poetry bring people that you've just seen throughout all your travels?
Well, it brings like it's the passion. I mean, because like in all these places, poetry is something that you know um in other countries it's maybe more valued, but still not as valued as like picking up a guitar and just writing, and singing horribly. Like you don't have to be that good. So I mean, the people that love poetry, love writing poetry. They love to write poetry. They love to be involved in it. I mean, I came into poetry not necessarily loving it. It was something that I could do really quickly as opposed to the other things I want to do. But over time, I've grown to love it. Over time, I've grown to like process the world through it. So when you meet poets, they there is a love of what they do, because people often say there's no money in poetry. That's a misnomer. However, it's very difficult to become like a multi-millionaire doing poetry. That's some kind of that might be a little impossible. I mean, you can make a living. You can make a living. It comes through teaching. It comes through this. It comes that. Like I said, you got to outsmart the problem. The fact that
Yeah.
that the world keeps poets poor, particularly the United States. The world keeps poets poor, but there are ways that can be outsmarted. Um, that said, you're probably not going to be a multimillionaire just doing poetry. Maybe if you expand something else, but like, yeah. So the love, the absolute love of the written word, of the spoken word, of the kind of generosity that poets have, even in this country, upon meeting, But like I said, be prepared because you come into poetry. There's a lot of excitement about a new voice, and then all of a sudden that voice isn't so new anymore. And like I said earlier, high school never ends, so you're gonna run into people that you know
Yeah, yeah, that's some true shit. No, I, no, and I appreciate that. But I appreciate you telling us a little bit about that expansive. Again, this global view. A lot of people don't look at it like that. A lot of people don't have that global view on the oral traditions, and it's so important for people to see that it can take you all over the globe. Every inch of this world we live in, there is oral traditions. People have voices. People have been trying to say something, want to say something. Now I want to move on and I want to talk about your community work. Now tell us a little bit about, now currently you are the literary director of the Mexican Cultural Institute of Los Angeles. Tell us about your role there and what is that looking like? What is that shaped into for that institute and for you?
So the Mexican Cultural Institute of Los Angeles, the basic mission of the Mexican Cultural Institute of Los Angeles is to be a bridge, basically from here to Mexico, from Mexico to here. So that's our general mission. We're also very interested in people who are interested in Mexican culture from all over the world. For instance, we got something from Ravenna, Italy, a mosaic from the Count of Ravenna actually gave a gift to us there at the institute. So that's one thing. But for the most part, we are a bridge from Mexico to the United States and from the United States to Mexico. So we hosted a scholar from UNAM, Alfonso Vasquez, over at the Mexican consulate. Alfonso Vasquez is the director of Chicana Fronteras, and he brought us out actually to go speak at UNAM. And so when we talk about going back and forth, that's a prime example. So he's a great guy. I mean, we went out there at UNAM with Luis Rodriguez, Lona Cantu, Gabriela Gutierrez Simas, David Romero, myself. We all got the chance to go read in Mexico City for a week, and that went to Alfonso. But that came to Alfonso to me through the MCI, the Mexican Cultural Institute of Los Angeles, of which I'm the literary director. The executive director is Jose Antonio Aguirre. He's a world famous muralist, mosaic artist. Program director is Margarita Medina, who is a renowned program leader, a renowned curator, as well as just a programmer of many events, workshop leader, workshops on developing ofrendas for like Dia de los Muertos, the altars.
Mhm.
Incredible, renowned throughout the world. So, yeah, the three of us make up the directory of the Mexican Cultural Institute of Los Angeles. So, The fact that they believed in me. I mean, I'm not like I'm not young like for the world, but I am young for this position. So the fact that they believed in somebody, um, my age range, to do something like this, um, is a it's a big honor. It's I don't take it lightly. It's been it's yeah.
Absolutely. No, big congratulations. And for those listening, do look for the Mexican Culture Institute Los Angeles. I'm sure they have plenty of interesting programming for people to check out. Now that is phenomenal. Now, as we're wrapping up, you know what? I'm always so curious. You know, you talked a little bit about your childhood, talked a little about it earlier, but when did you know that you were actually a writer, Matt?
I mean, I like when I was like a really young child. I mean, like, probably like 7 or 8 years old when I decided not to be the president. I decided that I was going to be a writer, and that was it. I mean, like when if I was told that I could not be the best position there was, or the strongest, most powerful position in politics because of something that was totally out of my control. And my father told me that. And, some people think that was a cruel act, other people, whatever. I don't know. I think it was just the way he is. He was trying to be like, he was trying to just, he really believes in like, hey, you're gonna walk in a certain direction and try and get there.
Yeah.
If it's unrealistic, then you could be a senator. That'd be great. Blah blah blah. Like that was that. And so and he took me to Washington D.C. So so it wasn't like he was trying to crush my dreams. But once that couldn't be, then I was like, well, I'm gonna be a writer, and I'm gonna be one of the greatest writers ever walked the face of the earth. And that became my goal. And it's been, there's been some detours since then, since I was 8 years old, but it's been my
Yeah.
goal since about the age of 26. So I once I started writing poetry, so it's my goal now, and I'm marching towards it in spurts, and sometimes I make some big advances, other times it seems I'm getting nowhere, and but for all that I've done, I really feel like my life is like a book. My life is like a novel, and we're only in like chapter 3. This book ends with Matt Sedillo, one of the greatest, whatever, to walk the face of the earth. That's my goal. And if I don't get it, then I don't get it. You shoot for the stars, you land on the moon, right?
Absolutely. There you go. No, that's those are definitely goals worthy to have, and I'm sure you're gonna achieve them. Now, last question for you, Matt, before we wrap up, we ask every guest on the Poet Speaks podcast, tell us, why do you need to get your words out?
Um, well, my words aren't just about me. My words are about things that affect millions of people. I mean, I really go on my way to really write, and whatever I take, strands of my own personal life, it tends to be in service of things that have happened to millions of people. I don't write about the weird, idiosyncratic things that happen to me and me alone. I write about things that happen to me, like I'm a kid, I'm in high school, principal is racist towards me. Well, I'm not the only one that's happened to. I'm in the workplace, and like I find out that like I'm getting paid very little, and all of a sudden the boss's son's getting paid, twice as much. I'm not the only person that's happened to. I'm being stopped by the police. I'm having this horrible experience. I'm not the only person that's happened to. I grew up in a neighborhood where they're poisoning the soil. I'm not the only person that's happened to. So it's really important for me to write about these things because I'm good at writing. And these things matter. These issues matter. These things have happened to me have happened to millions of people. So I really write to combat the injustice. Not that I only suffered, not that I've, because I have not. It's not that I haven't suffered, but they are suffered by millions. Because I want to see those things change, if not within my lifetime, very shortly after that. So, it's my duty and my responsibility to write as well as I can, write about things that matter.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that answer. It's his duty and his responsibility. Absolutely beautiful. Now, Matt, as we're wrapping up, finally, now tell us, what is 2023 looking like for your writing and beyond? And tell the folks out there, where can they find all your amazing work, website, Instagram links, social, whatever you got going on?
Yeah, mattsedillo.com. I find me on Instagram, Matt Sedillo. I don't really remember the exact numbers, but I'm the Matt Sedillo that looks like me. So I'm the one that's got a bunch of stuff about like traveling the world. There's a couple other Matt Sedillos, and they don't got it like that. They don't travel the world reading poetry, and they're not as handsome as me. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Some of them way better looking than I am. All right. Let's see. But what's 2023 look like? I'm going back to Mexico City. I've been invited to go read it. I'm going to UNAM to go read it at an international festival. I'm also going to be leading another delegation down there. I've been invited to South Africa. I'm still working out the details. I might go read down there at a festival. 2024, it looks like I'm probably going to be reading a Shakespeare Company in Paris. Also, potentially some festivals in Colombia. I mean, there's just hey, it's what the sky is not the limit when there's footprints on the moon. So I mean, there's all kinds of things that are going on.
There we go.
It's my goal by the age of 45 to have read on every continent on Earth, and so so like I got Europe, I got South America, I got North America, so I just need to get Asia, Africa, and Oceania. So I'm coming for you, Sydney.
There we go. Well, that's what's up. All right. Well, Matt, everyone, you heard all his links. His links will be down below in the description box, however you're listening to this podcast. He has some very big goals and is a very, very amazing guy. And Matt, this is such a wonderful conversation. I really loved enjoying talking to you today. And thank you so much for being a guest on the Poet Speaks podcast, Matt.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Everyone, again, Matt's links will be down below. And everyone, this is the Poet Speaks podcast. Take care. Bye-bye.